Today's scripture lesson is from the 40th chapter of the book of Isaiah, verses 21 through 31, and they read, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to live in, who brings princes to naught and makes the rulers of the earth as nothing. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown. Scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth, when he blows upon them and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see. Who created these? He who brings out their host and numbers them, calling them all by name, because he is great in strength, mighty in power. Not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. The book of Isaiah is a book that I have returned to again and again because of its themes of justice and of hope for a better future. But there is one verse from today's text that leapt out at me from the page, and I'm talking about the 22nd verse, where it reads in part, "It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers." And so from God's perspective, way up there, we are like little tiny bugs. Now, true, this is just a short verse that's part of a much larger whole that is meant to encourage those in exile. This whole book is a book that is meant to encourage those in exile, even those who feel so small. But allow me for a moment to go where my mind went while considering the comparison between humans and grasshoppers. The first time I can remember considering grasshoppers really was while riding my bike as a youth. If you've ever noticed, the grasshoppers come out in droves in the fall, and they would cover my driveway and the lane in front of my house. And I took their very presence as a challenge. And this was no good for them because they became the target for my front bicycle wheel. My goal was to see how many grasshoppers I could run down. So I would zigzag all over the road and I would try to run them over. And it was hard. Most of them would hop or fly away at the very last minute, but every now and then I would catch one unawares and I would hear what I then, but no longer now, but then took to be a satisfying crunch. Unfortunately, my abuse of grasshoppers did not end there. When I could, I would crush them underfoot or with my basketball. And why would I do this? I have no idea. For the life of me, I have no idea. My behavior back then mystifies me today. But I will say this. The only reason that I was able to bring myself to do it was because, to me, a grasshopper was of no account. I did not esteem it. They had little to no worth in my book. They were little more than a plaything onto which I could inflict mercy or harm. So when I first read Isaiah chapter 40 and that 22nd verse leapt out at me, I was a bit offended. When humans are compared to grasshoppers, this This offended me. It is as if the writer is suggesting that humans are of no account in relation to God. To put it in plain language, God is bigger than big. Humans are infinitely small by comparison. God is great. Humans are as bugs. Now remember, I used to squash bugs. I know how little a bug is worth from experience, or at least a former version of myself did. So if we are as small as grasshoppers to God, what does that say of us? Well, it all depends on what a grasshopper is worth. I remember the first time that I truly saw a grasshopper for what it was. I was in 7th grade, and I was expected to put together a bug collection for my science class. And I spent several weeks collecting bugs and pinning them to a piece of cardboard. And it was not difficult for me to catch a grasshopper. As I said earlier, they were everywhere. Late August, everywhere you looked. And so I caught one, and I must have used, and I'm sorry for the story if it's a bit graphic to you, but I must have used an inadequate amount of chemical to kill the grasshopper. For after I pinned it to the board, I noticed that it was still alive. It was then that my eyes were opened to the intricate beauty of a grasshopper for the first time. I noticed its elegant barbed legs and its multifaceted eyes. Each and every aspect of the grasshopper was magnified in that moment. I was at once aware of its capacity to suffer, and I was, for the first time, empathetic to its pain, and I wanted it to stop. I was even sadder that it was I who caused the suffering. For the first time in my life, a grasshopper had worth. It meant something. And for that reason, I no longer kill grasshoppers just because I can. Part of growing up, but part of becoming aware of what things mean and what things are. Even grasshoppers in their seeming insignificance and smallness. Small though they may be, the creatures of this earth are made by God for heaven's joy. So back to the grasshopper, or grasshoppers in Isaiah chapter 40. We must consider that though we be as small as grasshoppers in comparison to the one who, and I'm quoting again from the passage, has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand and marked off the heavens with a span. Comes from just before the passage we read today in verse 12. Has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand and marked off the heavens with a span. We are also worthwhile. We are noticed and attended to by God. I'm reminded of the words of the Sufi mystic poet Rumi, who wrote, "I am so small I can barely be seen. How can this great love be inside me? I look in your eyes. They're small in size, but see enormous things." The smallness of our size and our insignificance in the scheme of things means nothing to God. True, God is sustainer of the universe. True, we are blips on history's timeline. Yet even in your seeming insignificance, God thinks you are worth redeeming. You are precious, grasshopper though you may be. The same is true of each and every person that you meet. It's really all about your perspective. The problem is not in the grasshopper's size, but in the frailty of our spiritual eyes. Remember this the next time you encounter someone who your inclination tempts you to write off as insignificant. The world is filled with people who think that another's lack of accolades, popularity, talent, property, or charisma gives them the right to ignore them as one would a bug underfoot. But once we consider that the God of the universe takes notice of small things like sparrows and lilies and grasshoppers, we are challenged to rethink our systems of value and choose to see each and every person as the beloved child of God that they are. And that is what you are. But so is everyone else, which is the point. Hear again, little ones, the words of Isaiah. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. The grasshoppers find their wings and matter. May we find the eyes to see our neighbor and stranger alike, seeing them as God sees them in all of their alleged weakness and seeming insignificance. For in truth, they are a priceless treasure. Small though we seem, we loom large in the mind and heart of God, the God of the universe, the God who holds it all. In God, there is enough love and attention to go around. Thanks be to God. My only prayer is at this point, may this love increase in each one of us. Lord knows the world desperately needs it.